How about the Pacers' early camp injuries change their training camp battle for the final roster spot? We'll talk Delon Wright and much more there. Plus, what else mattered from preseason game one and Giannis? What's going on there? A division rival? We have a lot to talk about on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today we are going to dive more into what the injuries the Pacers suffered in their first preseason game could mean for the training camp battle. Huge ripple effects already at the ball handler position for the Pacers and what it means for their considerations. They need to do something about it. Like now, we'll find out more today if we find out the severity of these injuries. We'll talk a little bit about other stuff that I thought was noteworthy or interesting from the first preseason game, and dive into two questions / topic ideas from listeners. And at the end, kind of talk about Giannis. What is going on in the Central Division? Could the Pacers be the best team in it soon? Could Giannis be on the move? Can the Pacers actually get him? We'll just scatterbrain through it. Let's start with this, though. We don't have an update yet. The Pacers practice on Thursday, so we will have one at some point that day about the current status of their injuries. The only new thing we've really heard since Pacers Wolves is that Jalen Clark, the player involved in the play where Delon Wright went down with his head injury, said he reached out to him and apologized. He didn't realize how, maybe severe is not the word he used. I don't want to speak for him until I have the post pulled up, but he actually shared that he reached out. Yes, Jalen Clark tweeted, just want to publicly put out there, me and Delon did speak. I did check in on him and apologize. I just didn't realize how bad the collision was at the moment. So that's obviously a good gesture and obviously speaks to how violent that play was. Like you see the replay today, head-to-head contact, then head-to-hardwood contact. That's tough. That's really tough for a guy fighting for a roster spot, and the ripple effects continue from there, right? We talked about a little bit about just like the point guard woes yesterday. I want to extend that to the rest of the team now, because the reason they would have kept and still could keep, to be clear, I might be getting ahead of my skis at this moment, but Delon Wright is the need of a potential veteran third point guard. Not even necessarily that one that's so great on offense, although to me that is the biggest benefit of having a veteran at the position. But like if they want to play 2 point guards together, which is very Pacersy, right? They were very much platoon rotations in the first preseason game, full bench, full starters, etc. If they ever mix and match again and they want to play Nembhard and McConnell together, like they might need another point guard to play 5-10 minutes on some nights. 1, 2, if one of Nembhard or McConnell get hurt, which, spoiler, it has already happened, they would need like actual veteran savvy if they wanted to. They don't have to do that. They have other point guards on 2 ways. But, you know, those are the 2 things. And the third one would be like, even if you're developing really hard instead of going for wins really hard, having a caretaker and a setup man is important. Now, Delon Wright is not that as much as some other veteran point guards are, but there are reasons for them to want a vet. They signed a vet right before camp with their most up-to-date information about their team in mind. And now Delon Wright is hurt. Now, granted, he could be fine, and they could opt to keep him, but that's not the whole, like his injury alone is not the sole like thing to consider when thinking about the last Pacers roster spot now going forward, because not only is it about that, it's, well, Cam Jones is also hurt right now, and his back injury was described by Rick Carlisle as a multi-week thing. Who knows if he's ready for the regular season? And if you wanted to be development guy or you wanted to be a keep of 4 centers guy, both of those kind of had Cam Jones as a potential reserve guard who could get minutes. There goes that. He didn't even play in the first preseason game. He hasn't, been able to do a ton of camp because of this, right? That's another one. And then McConnell is now also hurt, right? And so that is who's playing in camp. I mean, we'll see. By the time you're listening to this Thursday, there's a chance we've heard like, yep, they're all good. They'll be playing Saturday. But you want to be cautious with injuries in the preseason. Like if they miss a single day of practice, this still has significant evaluation ripple effects. So this is like there's a couple layers to what happened in the Minnesota game when it comes to all these injuries, Cam Jones not playing. They made me really think about what I like really cemented how I feel about the roster battle. And one is the talk for me and everybody, I think, as we've kind of dove into what the Pacers could consider with roster spot 15 is, well, do they want 4 centers because 2 of their other centers are coming off Achilles tears, and so you never know what's going to go on their health. The 4th center would be great. Or do you need 3 point guards for the reasons I laid out earlier in terms of having a vet, having a caretaker, allowing the team to play the way that they've played lineup-wise for a lot of the season? Like, that has always been what the discussion has centered on, no pun intended, is what position would they choose? But the part that I think got talked about the least is something I already mentioned, is do you want another point guard in case one of the established guys get hurt? And that already happened. And when McConnell went down, like, you look at the piece of paper of like, okay, who's their backup point guard now? It's like, okay, it's either a 2-way player, and Quentin Jackson, we'll bring it to him in a second, is a good player. It's either a 2-way player or a rookie, or it's like Jarris Walker playing lead ball handler, right? Like, it got thin pretty quick in terms of like night to night. I'm not even saying that Ball and Wright is night to night rust or anything like that if he's the McConnell fill-in for a second and then he got hurt right away. But that made me realize just how like thin they are on every night. They're smiling, going, awesome. We're so psyched that this guy's going to be our one tonight. And that feels insulting a little to Quentin Jackson, who in the game was good, right? He showed all the stuff he did last year where, I already ran through this. If you want to listen to the game recap, he got notes from me because he was still very fast with the ball. He's still very threatening. And like, the thing that makes Quentin Jackson so interesting, he made his only shot. He had 3 points. He had 4 assists. And I even say this, like, he's not like a traditional setup point guard, like walk across the timeline, hold a number up. This isn't how the Pacers play at all, to be clear. But I'm just like describing a traditional point guard, like dribble across the timeline, hold the number up, run the play, pass to this guy, do this. Like, a lot of his assists are, and this is not worse than other types of assists, it's just different. A lot of his assists are like, oh, he's so fast getting to the rim that the defense kind of cracks, and then he's setting one up, and not like within the flow of the offense or the actions kind of assists. That's, I think, why people stray away from calling him like a usual point guard, but he can like set stuff up. He's a good player. So I think that ironically, all these injuries to point guards made me personally realize how much I think the Pacers need 3 point guards. And I think that they realized that going into camp, right? They had all summer to kind of assess, what do they need? Do they need 3 point guards? If they needed 4 centers and walked into camp and said, we need 4 centers more than 3 point guards, they probably wouldn't have brought in another point guard to camp, right? They had enough and more information than us about their team and said, we need another point guard. We would like to bring somebody in. They tried one. They even tried to get one. That player fell through, Monte Morris, and then still went out and got another, right? So they clearly identified they need one. And then in the first preseason game, the scenario that made that clear, why they did that, happened. So even though I don't think any of Isaiah Jackson had a rough first preseason game, I don't think any of them were like so awful in that first game. I don't think they need all 4, right? I think that we've seen enough health-wise from Jackson and Wiseman to say, yeah, it's okay. And the other thing is, if they need a 4th center so bad, how much of, and I've even talked about this too, has there been discussion this offseason of, well, it could just be Obi Toppin, right? Obi Toppin could play center if they need it. In fact, during their turnaround the season stretch last year, kind of between Moses Brown and Thomas Bryant really getting fully integrated by like late December, Christmas-ish, Obi Toppin was playing the 5 like every game in the regular season. They know that's an option. Jackson, even if he didn't have a great game, looks healthy, although his second stint was overwhelmingly solid after a disastrous first 2.5 minutes. Huff did good stuff on defense, and, we know what Wiseman is in the development plan that they hope he can be on. I think it's ironic to say this, but the situation that they now find themselves in with this roster battle and with the point guard injuries makes me think they need a 3rd point guard even more than I already did. And now they don't know who that is, because that's the other thing that happens now. Cam Jones hurt. If DeLon Wright can't practice, do they consider getting a different point guard in for camp? They have Exhibit 10 guys they could waive. They could waive Wright if he's going to be out for a while and they want to get someone else in enough to speed. Like, this is the most practice time you get all season in the NBA. If you're trying to get a new guy in the door to learn your system and be a point guard, this is the time to do it. So Wright's immediate health status is thing one to know. If he's going to be able to return in a few days, then yes, keep rolling with the guy who spent your first 10 days in camp and played an actual game with your team. If not, maybe sniff around on what else you could do. Do you want to promote somebody else? Do you want to sign somebody else? Like, is it worth waiting around? Because if they determine they want a third point guard and they want it to be him, losing this camp time really hurts for a new player, right? Who has been proven both times he's appeared in like a game action, whatever you want to call fan jam, to be a better defender than offensive player. And his offense will be important. So a lot of ripple effects from this roster battle that ironically made me realize that I think they need a third point guard, not much more, but like a good amount more than they need a fourth center. And now they got to figure out who that is and what they want to do with the position, even more than they did before camp, because TJ McConnell and Cam Jones are now hurt. So we'll learn more on Thursday. We'll talk more about this when we have clarity, hopefully with a guest tomorrow. But ironically, I think the roster battle has changed in a way that hurts the centers. So the centers are now battling for their spots, although I think Jackson's and Huff are pretty safe. And I imagine that Wiseman is going to be the third guy because he has guaranteed money. But Bradley did fine in the rotation, too. It's not like he did bad or Wiseman did bad in the first game. Let's talk about other stuff that mattered from game one, including what I just said about Tony Bradley and some other stuff that I didn't really get to yesterday, plus 2 comments from a listener on stuff that they would like me to talk about. And then we'll talk about Giannis to keep going here on Locked On Pacers. Before we do any of that, we got to talk about Quo. One of the tools that helps make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system that you've heard us talk about before, but with a new name. Here's what matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer counts and their conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo, it's the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications, works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no carrying 2 phones or relying on a deadline. It formerly, again, known as Open Phone, Quo lets your team share one number and collaborate on calls and texts. They have a shared inbox. They have a built-in AI agent that can answer after-hours calls and capture leads and keep things moving off the clock. Whether you're a solo operator juggling everything or part of a larger team, Quo makes it easy to stay responsive and professional. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you've got an existing number with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making this your first listen today and every single day, or second listen. Locked On NBA Game Night. Wes Goldberg and myself talking about Kevin Durant's debut with the Rockets. Very interesting. A little bit of Celtics Grizz stuff. Hugo Gonzalez yamming. And a lot of Giannis, which we'll get to in the third segment today. Also, congrats to the Phillies. Hooray. I get to be happy for maybe one more day. And the Aces are rolling in the WNBA Finals. Locked On Women's Basketball is back. Whew, the Fever almost beat them. Okay, let's talk about more from Pacers Wolves. Just some more micro stuff that I either didn't fit in or didn't make sense in my notes. One is I was very interested in the decision that they did in the first quarter that really slid under the radar. And I don't want to make this a big deal. I just want to put a pin in this. We'll come back to it if it happens again. And that is Isaiah Jackson fouls 3 times. And I get that they were trying to have, here's the starting 5, hockey sub, here's the bench, right? They did that throughout the first half. This lineup, then this lineup. So I get that when Jackson got 3 fouls, they weren't just going to bring in Jay Huff. Maybe they evaluated him with the starters in a different preseason game, but in that particular one, I get why they did not do that. However, I did at least raise my eyebrow when they went to Tony Bradley. I was like, oh, this seems like a time to put James Wiseman with rotation players, evaluate him in that setting. I would have liked to see James Wiseman in that setting, right? And I thought Tony Bradley played fine in his minutes. He did a great job boxing out Rudy Gobert. I remember fondly, by the way, I don't know if anybody else does, Tony Bradley ripping Andrew Nembhard away from Gobert when they played them in the regular season in Minnesota earlier this calendar year. That was like Tony Bradley's first real minutes with the Pacers at all. I thought Bradley was fine. This isn't even a commentary on either Bradley or Wiseman. Right, Wiseman made both his shots, got 3 offensive boards. He was out there with it's impossible. It was really hard to evaluate Wiseman because of the lineup on the floor to close the game. But I was at least surprised by that. And here's what I think about now every preseason. Remember in Jarris Walker's rookie year, Pacers' first preseason game was in Memphis. So much debate about who's going to start the 4. Is it going to be Jarris? Is Obi going to be the backup? Who else could play the 4? And then in Memphis, their backup 4 was Jordan Nwora. We were all like, whoa, Jordan Nwora is the backup 4. What's going on? Is this a thing? Is he going to play? I did a whole segment on this. Does it make any sense? And then he never played rotation minutes again. Even in the regular season, we never saw Jordan Nwora in that setting. And so sometimes I just have to be like, okay, shut up. It's preseason. Like, don't make a thing about this. Just remember that this happened. Now, it might not matter. Guaranteed money is a thing. They like Wiseman. They should like Wiseman. This is the season to try to develop someone like James Wiseman, but just keep a pin in that choice that they made. Other stuff from that game that I didn't really talk about, the Exhibit 10 guys. They were both pretty good at different things. Gabe McLaughlin was a beast in the glass. He had 6 rebounds. That was a team high. I didn't know much about him. He played on the Mavs in Summer League, so I hadn't even seen him in a Pacers setting before, but he was impressive. And Jalen Slauson hit some huge threes. They both did different good things, and they were both admittedly pretty up and down. I think even they would tell you that, but good to see solid minutes from those guys, even though they're probably, and by probably, I mean almost certainly going to be boom players. We've already heard about like Kyle Guy is going to come in and get an Exhibit 10 too. One of them has to be waiting for that to happen. I did find that to be at least interesting that I had, like obvious thoughts about what they were doing and what they were doing well. Some guys I didn't talk about at all after game one. I had no notes really on Obi Toppin. It was weird to see him have like a totally pedestrian, a normal game against Minnesota. He had 2 steals. Like his mobility was pretty solid. 2/3 of his shots were threes. I do wonder, and I talked about this a little bit on his season preview, what's his shot diet going to be this year? How much is he going to work inside or outside, given kind of his career arc with the improvement of his jumper and his ability to, of course, be like a vertical threat and be threatening at the basket? I mean, I don't want to read too much into FanJam in preseason, and I should cash that on everything I say for preseason discussions, but Obi was certainly running to the perimeter a lot within the flow of those bench units. I would not be surprised if his three-point attempt rate climbs a little bit this season, and he's just a comfortable shooter. He started slow last season, but then really got it going. I thought that was at least noteworthy in terms of the way he moved, the way that he was doing all sorts of things like that. I think I had notes on every other player and got to them at some point, but there were Tony Bradley's rebounding, so I hardly talked about him. I talked about his rotation spot more than anything, but like he's in his 8th season. Like seeing he was in his 8th season, I was like, wow, Tony Bradley's 8 years in the league, but that dude can hit the glass. There's a reason he's on the team. There's a reason he had a role in the finals. But everybody else I talked about for some amount of time already from the game. I wanted to get to some of those stray things that I was like, I don't know if I need to work this into the show. This isn't like some massive takeaway. So 2 more things I want to talk about in this segment before we talk about Giannis. I did ask for topics from people for today, expecting this to be the schedule. One person, thank you. I cannot remember your YouTube handle. You commented 2 things to talk about. One was just their first thing was just Aaron Nesmith. No specifics. Their second one had a lot of specifics. Look, man, Aaron Nesmith's a great player. And I think every Pacers fan knows how good Nesmith is. He was good in the playoffs. He's been a good player for them. He gets better every year. He should continue to do so. He's only 26. People forget. I hate that phrase, but I just used it. He only played 39 games last year or whatever it was. Not very many because he missed so much, like 35. He missed 35 games, I believe, from game 6 to like the halfway point with that injury he had early in the season. Like that is another not so subtle way to think about the Pacers maybe being a little better than people think this year. Is like, what is half a season of Aaron Nesmith worth? 1 win, 2 wins, right? Last year, a lot of the case for the Pacers being better than their win projection, which they were, and I predicted that, was they have Siakam for a whole season instead of half a season. That is obviously much more significant than Aaron Nesmith, but like, and Aaron Nesmith's going to miss some games this year too. Every player misses sometime. But like, is there, what if he plays 60 games? 21 extra games of Aaron Nesmith. How many wins is that worth? Even if you're losing some from obviously losing your point guard and your center from last season. Aaron Nesmith's very good. I think he can be better this year. And that thought crossed my mind at some point. And so this person just commenting Aaron Nesmith was certainly interesting to me. Their other comment was about Obi Toppin and specifically with his athleticism. Is it possible for him to be a good to better rebounder? And that's a very topical question because we'll see how this continues, but certainly an interesting, I would say, focus from the Pacers on the glass in this first preseason game. They hit it hard against a huge Minnesota team. Toppin finished the game with 2 boards, both on the defensive end. 50, like has been well documented, 50-41 win on the glass for the Pacers. And at times, Obi's had to be good on the glass. Last year was his top rebounds per game number in his career, and he did it in fewer minutes than he's done in prior seasons. I believe per minute it was like by far his best rebounding season. I want to double check that before I get something wrong. It was his second best rebounding season per minute. And a lot of times, Rick Carlisle says this with some bigs, like when they get their hands on the ball, they're just more involved in a meaningful way. His rebound percentage in terms of as a team was the second best of his career. It certainly feels like with his athleticism, he could be an awesome rebounder. The trouble with Obi being a heavy crash guy is he does push the ball up, like handling the ball in transition. Sometimes it's not a bad thing if he does, but he's best in the open floor, just like running without the ball and running into space to either shoot or dunk. If he gets the board and then has to pass, that's like a fraction of a second where he can't do that and get ahead. Offensive glass, obviously another good thing, but he's also a guy that, given his defensive, let's say, shortcomings, getting back is important, right? So he has the physical tools as a player to be a good rebounder. And there have been times, including for the Pacers, where his rebounding is important. When he plays the 5, rebounding is more important than his, transition abilities, for example. But I think that he uniquely, given his tools, still has to think about the right balance of crashing hard and being Obi Toppin and using those other strengths to either mitigate your defensive weaknesses or add to your offensive prowess. So, yes, I think he could probably average more or be statistically more effective on the glass, but at what cost, I would say, to the rest of his game is a fair question. But if the Pacers do slightly change their emphases on the glass this season compared to the rest of their play style, I would not be shocked if that impacted Toppin's numbers, at least to somewhat not significant levels, but like noticeable levels. Let's talk about Giannis to close this one out. Huge story. The Knicks are involved. The Bucks are involved. The teams that lose to the Pacers are involved. We'll talk about that to close out today's Locked On Pacers. But first, we need to talk about PrizePicks. This episode brought to you by them. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Do not miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. PrizePicks is so fun. It's simple. It adds to the excitement of football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in. It's quick. You can pick your lineup in under a minute. It's super fun because they have things like stacks. If you want to ride with a player, select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdown all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app, copy their lineups with one click. And the new injury reboot feature means if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it's not going to count against you. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups on PrizePicks after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. Back here on Locked On Pacers, next making us your first listen today and every single day, or second listen, Locked On Bucks. Yikes. Giannis, reporting from Shams, says he had a wandering eye towards one specific team, that being the New York Knicks, and it bled into August, and apparently there was a trade call or some trade calls between those teams. Who knows how significant they were? I don't want to just guess on that reporting. That part specifically is kind of separate from the Pacers. That's a Knicks-Bucks thing. Obviously, Giannis, not discontent, but Giannis wandering eyes and mind about his future is noteworthy to every team in the league, especially a division rival for the Pacers. And then Giannis spoke on Wednesday and said, did the classic NBA player that's a report, whatever, well, the truth of it, whatever. But he kind of said he would reevaluate his situation or his thoughts in 6 or 7 months. That's the end of the season, right? 6 months from now is April. If they play to May, that's 7. If they make it all the way, that's 8. So maybe he's reevaluating his future during the playoffs. I'm joking. But regardless, not the most significant, I'm a Buck for life kind of thing. He committed to this season, which I think is good. I think it's good for the Bucks that they get a chance with the team that they built. And of course, when they signed Thanasis, I think everybody realized Giannis would be on the Bucks this year. Obviously, one significant. If he goes to the Knicks will be spectacular. I don't know how they can trade for him with what they have right now, but if he specifically demands a trade just to one team, sure, maybe the Knicks can get him. I don't want to talk about that. What I do want to talk about is a couple layers of this that I think will interest fans of the Indiana Pacers. One, should Giannis request a trade this season or next offseason or at any point? Look, I'll say it now, and I will say it more specifically if it ever happens. Yes, the Pacers should have interest. Duh. He is amazing. He's one of the best 3 players on the planet. He's an MVP candidate every single season. If he is available and it's actually possible for the Pacers to get him, they should have interest. This is not a question. The question is, how can they do this? What is the actual functional way to get him? on the Pacers roster. If Giannis is traded this season, hopefully my stream is not lagging as bad as it looks like. My internet's a disaster. My chair broke today somehow. If I lean back and if you're watching on YouTube and it looks like I'm freaking out, it's because I'm about to fall over. What a mess of a tech day for me. You don't care about this. Giannis this season that is currently happening has a $54 million cap hit. Next year it's 58.5 with a player option the following season. It's a lot of money. He is well worth it, to be clear. I'm not saying it's a bad contract, but I'm saying it's a big number. And it's such a big number that Andrew Nembhard, Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith, and TJ McConnell combined is less than Giannis's salary. I say that because that is the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth highest paid players on the Pacers this coming season. Which is my other way of saying, if the Pacers are going to trade for Giannis, matching salary is really hard, unless Siakam or Haliburton's in the trade. Good luck convincing anybody, probably including me, to do any sort of Haliburton for Giannis trade. Siakam, look, he's better than Siakam. The point of trading for Giannis would be to have those three stars all together. I mean, if you can have Haliburton and Giannis, maybe you just do it. But, like, it's going to be interesting to see if this actually becomes a thing worth talking about for more than 2 seconds. What legal trade the Pacers could make without including Siakam? Would it just have to be Siakam plus something else? Would that even be something fans of the Pacers would be interested in? That's other discussions, but keep that in mind for Giannis and every other high-paid star. It's really hard for the Pacers to match salaries. Again, I think this is actually the most articulate way I could do it, because I've mentioned this since Miles Turner left about how the Pacers don't really have an easily tossable to the side mid-size salary. Their third, fourth, fifth, and sixth highest paid players combined this year have a smaller cap hit than Giannis. On one hand, that's how it's possible for the Pacers to have the roster they have. On the other hand, it makes trades quite challenging. So that's thing one for the Pacers. Is like, yes, if possible, they should have interest. Thing two would be like, well, how functionally can they do this? Thing three would be, yes, the Knicks are the team that we've heard so far, and like they have cat salary and Brunson. Like, they're good. They'd be awesome. The Pacers would, if they can't get him, they should be rooting very hard for the best Giannis packages to come from Houston or San Antonio or I hope you understand already the gist of what I'm saying. A team in the Western Conference. The Pacers have handled Giannis' team 2 years in a row in the first round, but he's still so good. You don't want to play him. He's a champ. When his teams are healthy, they're always threatening. Him going west would be huge. Then Luka and Giannis and Wemby and Shea and Jokic would all be in the West. All of them. That's another thing to keep in mind as this develops is what you want to hear as a Pacers fan, I would think would be the best package or the most interested teams are San Antonio and Houston or whoever it would be. And then ripple effect 3 would be just the Bucks are obviously worth keeping a huge eye on. They have Miles Turner. They have Giannis. Where they go from here. If they start the season slow, keep an eye on what they're doing, what their direction could be, how this could go for them, both because the Pacers play them 4 times a year, but also because of many other rivalry and playoff-related factors. It's going to be fascinating. I could probably do a 30-minute podcast just on my thoughts on the situation, but to tie it into the Pacers specifically, I wanted to do that. Locked On Bucks will have more on the full situation. I do think it's good that in general he committed to be playing for the Bucks this year. It's better for the NBA. I want the basketball to be the center of attention, and I hope it is. It won't be. I'm currently not talking about basketball and talking about him, but it's a division rival. It's a stud. I wanted to talk about it. If you have questions about it, let me know. I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony R. Reese. This podcast is on Instagram and Twitter at Locked On Pacers. Back tomorrow talking about the updates we get on point guard injuries and other things with probably the center battle as well with a guest, hopefully. Thank you all so much for listening today. Back tomorrow talking more Pacers. Till then, everybody, have a wonderful day.